driving. There's somebody imaginary that should have been here. God, you've been faithful for whatever reason, God, and we thank you for that. It's already been declared that we're not worthy of your faithfulness, God, but you sent your son, Jesus Christ, to the cross for the sins of men and women in this world. So we prepare to celebrate that this week, God. We come before you now asking that you will look over us in this moment, that you will give us unction, energy, that you will open up our hearts to receive from you, that you will give our minds understanding and revelation to pour out, God. Would you reach somebody tonight? Would you revive somebody's soul, God? Somebody needs a touch. Somebody's been aggravated with work this week. They've been frustrated with a marriage or a relationship. And somebody just needs a touch from heaven right now, God. So we're asking you, as your word is declared, that we have not because we ask not. And God, would you visit us right now? Would you hang out with us for a little while until we receive deliverance, God? Would you just kick it with us for a moment until we're able to love you the way you loved us, God? We ask now that you teach us, train us, guide us, and direct us. For we are your children, and your word declares that you will train up a child in the way that we shall go. And God, as we get older, we shall not depart from your way. So God, we thank you now for this moment. Thank you for leadership. Thank you for life. Thank you for your word. We pray now in Jesus' name. Amen. Such an honor and a privilege to be home one more time. Just give a couple shout outs. I see some of my brothers. Willie, Cordell, Brother DeWitt, Tracy, Sadars. I appreciate y'all so much being here. I appreciate all of you being here. My brother Josiah coming in straight from work. I want you to grab your Bibles real quick before we celebrate my big brother who's been a mentor to me. I want you to go ahead and grab your Bibles to John chapter 13. John chapter 13. And as soon as you get there, I want us to give a shout out to the angel of this house, who's just been special in my life, and I know been special in many of your lives. Can we just put our hands together and celebrate the shepherd of this house? Come on, y'all. Appreciate you dearly, man. I appreciate you. If you would stand, ask that you would stand for the reading of the word. I'm not sure why he selected to read this text tonight, but I didn't tell him in the back where I was coming from, but God has ways of working together. That's right. So I want you to look at John chapter 13, verse 1, and I'm only reading clause A, as he's already read the first 17 verses. And it reads just like this from the New International Revised Version. It says, "It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to move on." Thank God for the reading of the word. The word of God. It's good. Come on and preach, man. Verse 6. It said, just before the Passover meal, Jesus knew that the time had come for him to move on. Come on and work. Brothers and sisters, friends, and family, clearly, it doesn't take a lot of academic knowledge for you to know that it's Thursday in Troy, Alabama. It's Thursday here in Troy, Alabama, but metaphorically and symbolically, it's also Thursday in ancient Jerusalem. And I need you to strap on your spiritual thinking caps and take a journey with me back, not to the fourth day of our working week, but I need you to go back with me to Holy Thursday in Jerusalem, in ancient Jerusalem. And here, according to Matthew, the Jewish gospel writer Matthew, it has been a relatively interesting week for Jesus, because on Monday, Jesus decides to go to church, and when he gets to church, he's so disgusted and what he sees at the church that once he enters the church courts, it says that he starts to kick over tables and benches and kick over bird cages, and then he looks at everybody in there, and everybody that's hustling inside the church, he tells them, you got to get out. And then he says to everybody there, my house is a house of prayer, but y'all have turned it into a den of robbers. That's on Monday. On Tuesday, he's hanging out with the disciples, kicking it with his boys. And as they're walking, he sees a fig tree. He goes up to the fig tree and he curses it because it has not produced anything. That was the morning, that evening. Jesus is sitting in the synagogue and he's teaching, because at that time the teacher sat and the people stood. He's sitting and he's teaching in the synagogue, but some church leaders decide to come, some from the AME church, some from the Baptist church, some from Impact church, some from the Kojic church. They decided to come and they want to debate with Jesus. So they asked Jesus a question, in what authority do you come in? And Jesus, he does something very interesting because he answers their question with the question. He says, well, where does the baptism of John come from? Does it come from heaven or is it man origin? And now they're together, the Kojic, the Baptist, Impact, everybody, the AME, they're together trying to come up with an answer. And when they decide that they don't know, Jesus responds, well, I guess you won't know in what authority I come in. That's on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it gets more interesting because now Judas has snuck off from Jesus and the boys, the disciples, and Judas is behind Jesus' back making a deal with the chief priests on how to sell Jesus out and get Jesus arrested. In 21st century terminology, on Wednesday, Judas is snitching and selling Jesus out. This is quite interesting because you have on Monday, Jesus is embarrassed by the church, so he goes off. On Tuesday morning, Jesus is seeing a fig tree that's tripping. He goes off. On Tuesday evening, they're debating with Jesus at church, so he goes off. On Wednesday, the one that he entrusted with the money and made treasurer, the same one that sat right next to him, the same one that put his hand and dipped it in the same cup with Jesus, has now sold him out and is snitching on him. This is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And isn't it interesting that we call this Holy Week when in actuality it actually sounds like Hell Week? Okay, y'all ain't ready. I know it's been a rough week for some of y'all, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we refer to as Holy Week, but it seems as if this Hell Week, because Jesus has been going through turmoil with the people around him. On Monday, I just explained. On Tuesday, I just explained. And on Wednesday, I just explained. But now, once we get to Holy Thursday, we have a new presenter. The presenter now is John. And on Holy Thursday, there's a transition in things because Jesus has gone through what we call Holy Week, but it's really Hell Week, and it's been chaotic in his life. And the truth is, family, if we pause for a moment and we look at this, and though it's metaphorical and symbolic to ancient Jerusalem, if some of us will be honest with ourselves, we'll look at the week that Jesus has had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and we'll testify that, Craig, that sounds about like my life. Maybe not y'all, but I'll just speak for myself for a moment. It sounds much like my life, because sometimes everything can be going well, and I can enter Monday thinking that I'm getting ready to have a great week, and by the time Monday morning cranks up, everything chaotic has broken loose in my life. All Hades has came loose in my life. Sometimes I can come into Monday with a little bit of money in my pocket, but by the time Monday ends, all kind of bills have come from nowhere. I got people calling needing a little money. Children need some money. Car tears up. Everything goes wrong. Troy University calls you with a hold on your account from 2012. Every now and again, you get caught up in a week like Jesus just had. And if we'll be completely honest with ourselves, it's strange to us that how can we go into a week expecting it to be holy, but the same thing we expect it to be holy is the same thing that takes us through hell. Wow. Matthew, according to Matthew, has been a relatively interesting week for Jesus, but now the new presenter, who we call John the Apostle, he informs us that it is now Holy Thursday, and on Holy Thursday is quite interesting because Jesus has now come to a place where they are preparing the table. They're setting the table, if you can see it. They're preparing the meal for Passover, and John says to us that while they're preparing the table, while they're setting the table, preparing the meal, that Jesus already knew that it was time for him to move on. Okay, this is interesting because the table is being set, the table is being prepared. Jesus shows up in his mind already knowing that it's time for him to move on. And this is the reason why, family, because you got to understand that moving on does not require confirmation, it just requires you knowing. Okay, maybe that was over some of your head. Because many of us, if we be honest with ourselves, you're right now waiting on a confirmation for you to move on. When the truth is, and if we'll be honest, there's some things that you should have moved on from before they ever got started. But you're sitting around waiting on God to drop something from heaven, and God has already given you the sign that you should have never got involved in some stuff you was involved in. You should have never been in some places you were in, and you should have been moving on before they ever got started. Jesus, according to John, is already knowing that it's time for him to move on before the meal ever gets started. John, our presenter today, John the apostle presents to us and tells us that before the meal gets started, that Jesus already knows that it's time for him to move on. He knows that it's time for him to go back to God. Yeah. But there's an issue. John says that Jesus loves his disciples. The ones that are with him. And John says that he loves them, and now is the time that he's going to show them how much he loves them. Okay, can I talk about John is in a position of writing, and John says Jesus knows that it's time for him to leave. But his problem with leaving is that he loves the ones he's with. Can I drop this on you real quick? Sometimes leaving is loving. Sometimes you gotta love them enough to walk away, but more importantly, sometimes you gotta love yourself enough to leave some situations, to leave some people, to leave some. Do I got anybody in the room on tonight that you just make it up in your mind in 2018 that before Resurrection Sunday comes, that I love me enough to walk away from some people, I love me enough to walk away from some places, I love me enough that I realize it's time to move on. Sometimes Jesus leaving is loving. Jesus says I have a dilemma because I know it's time for me to go, but I love the disciples, and now is the time to show them how much I love them. But we encourage Jesus that sometimes your leaving displays your love. Can I walk through this for a moment? It's in the moments that Jesus don't say nothing to me that I realize he loves me that much more. Y'all ain't liking me tonight. Because when Jesus answers and gives me everything that I want, sometimes it cripples me. When every prayer is answered in an instant, when everything happens immediately the way I want, that's when I get crippled. But it's those moments when I'm in my room and I'm crying out to God, trying to get an answer, trying to seek understanding and clarence, and I don't hear nothing. It's that moment that I realize that he loves me that much, because some of the stuff I was asking for, I wouldn't appreciate, or better yet, if I can keep it 100, some of the stuff I was asking for, it was toxic to me anyway. And I'm so glad, I don't know about you, that some of the stuff I prayed for, that God loved me enough not to give it to me, that God loved me enough not to answer me when I was asking for it. Because if I would have got everything I asked for, if I would have just got everything I asked for, if I would have just got everything, if you be honest with yourself, if you would have got everything you asked for, if you would have got everybody you asked for, y'all ain't gonna talk. If you would have got your hands on some stuff you asked for, you wouldn't be able to sit up in here looking bougie and spaghetti tonight, because you're gonna be somewhere trying to cover up your head and hide your identity. If you could have got your hands on some of the stuff you really asked for. That's a sermon all by itself. We can shout over the fact that I didn't get everything I wanted. I thank God that I didn't get everything I asked for. God, I thank you right now that you didn't give me everything I deserve. God, I thank you right now that you didn't give me the stuff that I earned. God, I thank you right now that you look beyond all my faults. Sometimes you got to be okay that he didn't give you everything that you asked for. John the presenter, John says, Jesus already knew that it was time for him to move on. But the issue that we have, and the question that lingers, is how do I know when it's time to move on? The question that lingers is, how do we know when it's time to move on? Jesus knew it was time to move on. But Craig, how do I know when it's time to move on? You know it's time to move on, number one, when you get confidence in who you are. What he's saying, Craig, is right here in the text. If you look at the text, this is what happens with Jesus. Jesus says, according to John, I know it's time for me to move on. He says, I'm going back to God. Here it is. He says, God has given me the key to everything, and I'm going back to the one that sent me. That's right. I came from God, and I'm going back to God. He says, I can gain confidence because I know the one that sent me, me, and I'm getting ready to go back to the one that sent me. The problem with some of us to why we're stuck in positions that we're in, because we have not gained our confidence yet. And when you gain confidence, you can walk around and you can understand that I'm different. I'm okay with being different. I don't sound like everybody. I don't preach like everybody. I don't sing like everybody. I don't dress like everybody. I may not match. My socks may look different. My style may be different. But I'm so okay with me that I now have confidence. Why? Because I know who differently and wonderfully made me. And when you get to a point and make up in your mind that you're just okay with who God made you, it does not matter what people say about you. It don't matter how they act when you come around. It don't matter what they used to say about you, what they're getting ready to say about you. But when you get confidence in yourself, it helps you to move on. You know how you move on from a broken relationship? Get confidence in yourself. You know how you move from a broken situation? Get confidence in yourself. You know how you move on from being broke? Get confidence in yourself. I may not have the money I want. I may not have all the money I need, but you won't tell it when I walk around, because I'm going to walk around just like I got everything that God has promised me. Why? Because I got confidence in who God made me, and I might not be wealthy now, but because of who God made me, I know what's coming. And you need to high-five somebody around you right now and let them know I'm moving on because I got confidence in me. Listen to what Jesus says according to John, that the evening meal was now being served, and the devil had already tempted Judas. Yes. The devil had already influenced Judas to sell Jesus out. Yeah. But Jesus knew that God was sending him to do everything. And here's the greater part. He knew he came from God and that he was going back to God. Yeah. And the question sometimes is, I hear you, Craig, that if I'm going to move on, I need confidence in myself. But how do I get confidence in myself? It's simple. Remind yourself that you came from God. Yeah. See, some of us have to spend money on bundles of hair and get your hair weaved up every week to try to get confidence. Some of you sisters got to get your face beat to get confidence. You got to get the contour and the foundation. Some of us got to get a fresh cut and liner. But every now and again, I can walk around with a nappy head because I understand I come from God, and my confidence is not built in my weave. My confidence is not in my car. My confidence is not in my makeup. My confidence is not in my watch. But my confidence is in the one that sent me and the one that I return to. It seems in this moment that Jesus uses leverage against his own insecurities. Yeah. Because Jesus already knows that Judas has sold out and has been influenced by the devil to sell him out. And Jesus now uses his own leverage against his own insecurities. He has confidence. Number one, if you're going to move on, you got to have confidence in yourself. You move on when you have confidence in yourself. Number two, you move on when your efforts are not appreciated. Let me show you the text because some of you don't believe me. John says that Jesus, he gets done eating. And Jesus gets up from the table and he grabs a towel. He takes off his outer garments. He lays them down, folds them beside the table. He puts a towel around his waist. He takes a bowl and he fills up this red bowl with water. Inside of it, he takes it. He sits it beside his disciples' feet, and he goes from one disciple to the next, washing their feet. But here's the thing: when it gets to Peter, the outspoken one, Peter says, "But wait a minute, Jesus, you gonna wash my feet?" Watch this. Jesus responds, and this is what blows my mind. Jesus says, "You don't understand it now, but you'll understand it later." That's right. Can I push the gas a little bit? In other words, what Jesus says to Peter is, you may not appreciate what I'm doing now, but you'll appreciate it later. And one of the clear signs that it's time for you to move on is when the efforts you put forward are no longer appreciated. But the problem with some of us is that we stick around places and hang around people that never appreciate you, and you try to charge it to God and say, well, God just got me going through. But sometimes you got to come to the realization and the logic that when people don't appreciate you no longer, that's a sign for you to move on. When the place you're in don't appreciate you any longer, that's a sign for you to move on. Some of us got to let go of jobs. Stop hanging on to a job because it's the way that you make ends meet and they don't appreciate you on the job. You got to trust that God is going to do better for you. Why? Because you're worth more than what they're giving you. You're worthy of the appreciation. And it's when those moments happen that you step out on faith and trust that now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. So I don't put my confidence in no job. I don't put the confidence in the man. I step out on faith because I know one thing for sure. If I put confidence in God, God will make sure I get to where I need to go. Here it is. It's time to move on when you are no longer appreciated. Jesus says, Peter, you can't even appreciate what I'm doing now. I have humbled myself. This is the greatest level of humility, and you can't appreciate it now. This blessed me. Maybe somebody will shout off for this, but you'll appreciate it later. And then let me talk to the sister real quick. The brothers will catch this, and the sister may will too. Isn't it interesting that after, okay, sisters, y'all should have caught that right there. That after you already moved on, that's when you get the text message of, I wish I would have, because if I knew then what I know now. I know we're in church on a Thursday night, but if you'll be honest, and brothers, if y'all will testify, I'm a witness. I've sent the text message before myself, because sometimes it's after things move on that you start to appreciate them. And Jesus confirms that right here in the text, because he says, Peter, you won't understand it and appreciate it now, but you'll certainly understand and appreciate it later. I see it. Number two, you know it's time to move on when your efforts are not appreciated. Third and finally, Craig, when is it time to move on? It's time to move on when your assignment is complete. Come on. This blessed me because Jesus, he washes their feet, has a discussion with Peter, washes Peter's feet, and then Jesus gets up. He goes back to his spot at the table. And the text says he asked the disciples, do y'all even understand what I just did? Right. I just washed your feet. I just humbled myself. I just displayed the greatest level of humility. Watch this. So now you should wash each other's feet. Here it is. Jesus said, I gave you an example, and my assignment is complete. Let me help y'all real quick. I see it, come on. Jesus says, I'm up from the table. I'm going to sit down. And then he poses a question to him. He said, do y'all even know what I just did? I just humbled myself. That's right. The greatest level of humility. I just put on display and set an example for you. And now my assignment is complete. And family, when you finally get to a place that you can be the example and put it on display, that's when your assignment is complete. You know what's interesting to me in the 21st century is that we're so busy trying to help people complete assignments, but people can't complete assignments till they first learn how to be the example. The reason that so many people are walking in unfinished assignments is because they have not been examples. But people are saying that they're completing purpose. People are saying that they're walking in purpose. But the truth is, they have not yet completed the assignment because they have not been the example. Let me help you real quick. I'm getting ready to get out of here in a moment. When I was a sophomore at Cedars at Troy University, as a football player, we had to stay for summer school. I stayed for a summer school math class. Dr. Avon, I was in this class one summer. And we had an exam. Well, I was well prepared for the exam. I actually studied for the exam. I was ready for the test. I get to class. Morning class, 8 o'clock in the summer. That's right. I wasn't saved yet in the summer. 8 o'clock class. Y'all fucking with me. Wasn't saved yet. 8 o'clock class. That's right. Night before, okay, 8 o'clock class. But I'm prepared for the exam. Right. I get to his class. He gives clear instructions. He says, when you finish the test, that's right, turn it in, grab the next assignment, and I'll see you next week. Wow. That translates to, when you complete the assignment, grab the next assignment and move on. Okay. He tells me, grab the next assignment after you complete this assignment and move on. But here it is. I finished my test first. I was prepared. I studied. I was get out of there, I finish my test first. But the problem with finishing first, and if you're me in that predicament, I didn't want him to think I cheated.
Yeah. Right.
So in the back of the classroom, I put my head down to relax and wait on somebody else to be the example.
All right.
And when I put my head down, Josiah, I doze off. Because it's 8 o'clock, I wasn't saved yet. Okay, y'all.
Yeah.
I doze off. By the time I wake up, I have the completed assignment on my desk. But I don't turn it in because I panic. Because I see the other examples leaving the classroom with their book bags.
Yeah.
I never seen them turn their tests in. I never seen them grab the next assignment. I just saw them leaving.
Yeah.
So quickly I grabbed my stuff. I put the test in my bag, not remembering I got to turn in the assignment, grab the next assignment to move on.
Yeah.
So when I put the test in my bag, I run out the classroom following the other examples when I was supposed to be the first example because I finished first. So now I have the assignment that I had already completed still hanging on to my back. So in other words, I'm carrying baggage of what I've already completed when I should have grabbed the next assignment and I moved on. And all I'm trying to say to some of us in the room is that if you're going to move on, you got to first complete the assignment, grab the next assignment, and then move on. But don't get caught up in the classroom like I was, and because you finished first and should have been the example, that you don't have confidence enough in yourself, that you sit down and you start to doze off, hanging on to the old assignment. And some of us right now, you looking at me real crazy, but you got about 3 or 4 old assignments in your book bag that should have been turned in a long time ago. And you haven't been able to move on to where God wants you to move on to because you still got those assignments. But can I get 3 people that'll stand up right now and empty out your book bag and tell the teacher, I'm sorry I walked out the classroom, but God, here go assignment 1, here go assignment 2, and then I get my next assignment so I can move on. Number one, I gotta save a little energy for the morning. Number one, you know it's time to move on when you become confident in who you are. Number 2, you know it's time to move on when your efforts are not appreciated. And number 3, you know it's time to move on when your assignment is complete. Family, I'm leaving on this. After 16 years of fighting for her marriage, fighting for her life, literally fighting her husband, hiding bruises, being mistreated, with 36 cents in her hand and a nearly maxed out credit card, with a bloody face, Tina Turner checked into a hotel room based off of her name and reputation. Months later, on July 27, 1976, she built up the courage to file for divorce from the abusive Ike Turner. Well, 20 years later, it gets interesting because she has a one-on-one exclusive interview with Oprah Winfrey.
That's right.
And in 1996, in that interview, Oprah opens up and asks Tina, what made you finally get to the point to leave?
Yeah.
And the response of Tina Turner is quite interesting because Tina takes a moment and she sighs in the interview and she says, I finally realized that Tina Turner was created by the God-given voice of AME.
Yeah.
She said, and when I realized that, I came to the realization that this voice was given to me by God, that it was not created by another man. Wow. And I came to the point and realized that God had something better for me, so it was time to move on. And family, I don't really know who you are in the room tonight, but I just want to encourage you with a Tina Turner spirit that you got to realize that that's what's inside of you. It wasn't created by man. It wasn't created by woman. It wasn't created by a church. It wasn't created by a pastor or a bishop. But what you have inside of you is God-given. And you got to make up in your mind, if God gave it to me, if God created it, if God gave me confidence, if God appreciates my effort, if God knows that the assignment is complete, then it's in me to move on. That's right. If everyone will, I want you to stand to your feet real quick. I'm done.
Great word.
If you can, reach and touch somebody real quick. This message is relatively interesting for many reasons, because it's Thursday, also metaphorically and symbolically Thursday in ancient Jerusalem, and Jesus is getting ready to take on a task tomorrow that is challenging to the human body but necessary to the divine person. And as is interesting to that connection, it's interesting for my own personal life. Because just in 2013, I sat in this same city and wrestled with whether or not to leave.
That's right.
Where ministry was thriving, where I was comfortable, where everything was good, I was well known, good job, daughter was in reach. But sometimes in life, God will look at the things in your life and how they're orchestrated in the moment and give you a glimpse of what's in store for the future.
Yeah.
And it's what's in store for the future that helps you move on from what's in the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't really know who's in the room today. I just want to give you a word of encouragement that maybe now is time to move on. That once you get the confidence in yourself, once you see that your efforts are no longer appreciated, once you understand that your assignment in Troy, Alabama is complete, maybe it's time to move on. Don't be held bondage. Don't be held in captivity. Don't be held stuck in a place because you can't see outside of the walls of 231 Highway 29. Maybe it's your time to move on. God, I ask that you will look over every person in this place today, God, and we ask today that you will just give us strength, God, that you will allow us in some moments, even as Tina Turner with 36 cents in her hand and a maxed out credit card, God, she knew that it was time to move on. And some of us in this room tonight, we have less than that spiritually. We have less than that psychologically and mentally. But God, we hear you crying to us, telling us it's time to move on. So God, I'm asking that you will cover every person in this place today, tonight, that you will look over them spiritually, that you will look over them financially, that you will look over them psychologically and mentally, in their health, God. Would you fix and deal with hypertension and diabetes, cardiovascular heart disease, cancer, God? Would you deal with it now, God? Because as we can move on from people and things, we can move on from sickness and poverty, God. We can move on from brokenness, sexism, racism, prejudice, God. We can move on from it all. God, we thank you today. And I want to say this. I don't know if this is okay, Pastor. Maybe, as the choir sings this song, this is a good song. Maybe you want to come to the altar for a moment. I would not be who God has called me to be if this altar wasn't open for you to come for a moment of prayer. This is your opportunity to make your way down. Don't ever be bound by what anybody else thinks about you. I've learned in my life that so many people are caught by what everybody else thinks. If you're a preacher, you can't come to the altar. That's a lie from the pits of hell. I've been saved, so I can't come to the altar. They're going to think differently of me. That's not true. This is your opportunity